Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Dead on Dave. Welcome once again to your daily focus in what is quickly becoming one of my favorite things to do every single week. You know, I say that about a lot of the shows. It's mainly because this is like my favorite part of my day. I love my family. I love doing other things, but doing these shows is just something I've really become quite fond of. And viewer questions is becoming something that I absolutely love to do. It's so much fun interacting with you guys. It's kind of one of those things where I don't feel it's done enough in the YouTube community, and people take themselves far too friggin' seriously. I mean, this is YouTube, guys, and there's a lot of people out there, especially within the wrestling community, that really do. They're just so far up their own ass that it's just ridiculous. It's insanity, and it is what it is. I take things very seriously on my channel in a lot of cases, but when it comes to you guys, when it comes to the questions, when it comes to interacting, that's like my number one priority. Because it's fun, and without you guys, this channel doesn't even exist. It would just be me talking to myself, and honestly, I don't know how much fun doing these videos would be if I would have stuck at 10 subs forever and nobody's watching it. I mean, yeah, it's nice to talk sometimes, but it's also nice to have interaction with people. So it really means a lot that everybody's commenting every week. And this week, I got so many questions to get to. We got a big show, all kinds of questions, really excited about it. First, a couple quick announcements since I have your attenzione. If you want to have your question played, like if you want to record something and I'll play the WAV file, you can send it to me or you can send it to me on Twitter. I think you can send it right there on Twitter, and I will play it. You can also send it to me on Facebook. Send me a message with the file on Facebook, the facebook.com/this guy's take on it, or of course at Dead on Dave V. Find me that way. Right on YouTube, Google Plus. You can get to me through there. If you look at the About stuff on Google, on YouTube, you'll find me Google Plus. Go ahead and send me your question in audio format, and I'll play it and I'll answer it instead of just reading it. If just a little higher level of interaction. Hell, if you want to video record your question, get yourself on camera, put yourself on the show. Since I can't do call-in stuff right now, that's a really good way to kind of have an interaction with you guys. So if you want to video record your questions, I'll put them on here. Just make sure you send it to me in MP4 format, please. That would be easiest and smallest, most compressed. All right. I'm kind of stumbling over my words. Blah, blee, 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 blee. Okay. I feel better now. A lot of questions. A lot of questions this week, and I'm real excited to get to them. So let's jump right into it. This whole first segment is the Dr. Bostonian segment because he sent me a 4-pack of questions. Actually, really a 5-pack of questions, and they're all really good. So I'm going to get to them all. I'm reading every question that's in the comment section from last week. And if you want your comments read next week and your questions answered, make sure you go ahead and put it right down in this video or do as I said and send it to me in audio format or video format. So let's get to it. Dr. Bostonian writes his first question. When do you think Chris Jericho will hang up the boots, and against who? That's a really interesting question because Jericho has been a part-timer now for a couple of years. His part-time kind of goes a little bit longer than others because when he does come back, he tends to stick around for a while. But I do feel the end is coming soon. I don't see him wrestling much more than another year or so. There's a lot of rumors that he will not be at WrestleMania. I don't know if that's truth. I could see him showing up at WrestleMania in some capacity. Probably next year's WrestleMania, I could see him wrestling a retirement match. And I see it against a guy like Seth Rollins. It makes a lot of sense to me as far as somebody that might need that extra little push. If this main event scenario that he's in right now is just an illusion, which some people do think it is. And I don't blame them for thinking that. Some people think that Rollins is simply in the match just to give Cena a way out of getting beat clean. And maybe that's a possibility. I feel they've built him more than that, so I think Rollins is there for a bigger purpose and a bigger reason than just being a distraction. But I do firmly feel that Seth Rollins is walking out of the Rumble with the title, but we'll see what happens. But I think Seth Rollins, if this is kind of a smoke and mirrors thing and Seth Rollins takes a step back within the next year, a feud with Chris Jericho this same time next year would not surprise me, and having a retirement match for Jericho at next year's WrestleMania. Or maybe even Jericho, depending on his travel schedule and his band schedule and everything, maybe he has a retirement match on a Monday Night Raw. That's a very Chris Jericho thing to do. As much as he loves the spotlight of the big events, he's also quite a generous guy when it comes to his career. I could see him doing a retirement match on Monday Night Raw, something like that. A lot of eyeballs. It should help with viewership. I could see that. And him going out in a really dignified manner would be cool. He's one of my favorites of all time. I love Chris Jericho. I think he's great. He can be a little much at times. He can be a little annoying, but I love Chris Jericho. But, yeah, I think Rollins, or it could be even, maybe it's somebody who needs a push that's coming up from NXT, like a Kevin Owens. I think a Kevin Owens is a really good candidate. His first major feud within WWE could be with Chris Jericho. And what better way than to establish a beast like Kevin Owens than have him finish the career of Chris Jericho? That's a feather in the hat. Sami Zayn, that's another one I wouldn't mind seeing, depending on how they bring Sami Zayn up. There's a whole bunch of different ways they can go. Question number 2 from Dr. Bostonian, which I love that name, by the way. Does Bo Dallas have a future in WWE? Because I love the Running Bulldog, and I think it's fascinating to see. I think he's saying, I feel he has a lot of potential, just a really shitty gimmick. I do feel he has a future. What that future is, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's a coincidence or not that both of IRS's, Mike Rotunda's kids have almost cult-like gimmicks. Bray Wyatt with a darker gimmick of, being a cult leader and, taking on the Wyatt family and being a part, basically a cult leader in a lot of ways. And Bo Dallas essentially doing the opposite end of the spectrum, but the same thing in a lot of ways. The whole Bo Leave thing, the Tony Robbins type stuff, it really is the same kind of gimmick, just the opposite end of the spectrum. I eventually feel if there's nothing else that they can do with Bray Wyatt, and maybe Bray Wyatt is not going to be in this match with Undertaker, which I thought was a definite like a few months ago. And now I've started to wane on that because the way that they've been booking things. But the reality is they have protected Bray recently after burying him in other feuds for the past year. Recently they are building him for something, and I don't know what it is. When Bo Dallas comes back, because I believe he's injured right now, when he does come back, I wouldn't mind seeing him and Bray work something together if there's nothing else going on for Bray. If they can't figure something better to do, a brother feud could be really entertaining. I'm not sure how I'd want to see it, if I want to see Bo doing his gimmick that he has right now. But if they want to continue Wyatt's reign through the WWE trying to fix people, what better person than Bo Dallas, who, you could have Bo come back out and do his Bo Leave stuff, and then Bray targets him. Says, now you're my brother, and I've got to fix you, man. His whole thing that he does. Follow the buzzards. I could see him doing something like that with Bo Dallas. But if they wanted to go a different way, I could almost see Bo Dallas going back to NXT at this point and restarting his career and repackaging. Because I don't feel the Bo leave gimmick ever worked. I think people right now are in the mode where they really want to chant for anything. I don't think that Bo Dallas has any type of real star potential as he is now. He's a good wrestler. He's not a great wrestler. I don't think he's really any better than Bray, to be completely honest, in the ring. And Bray is decent, but he relies so much on the psychological that we tend to overlook some of the limitations he has in the ring. He's very mechanical in how he works, and the movesets that he has, it's very compact. Bo is under that. His matches are very dull, and they're not. He hasn't really been taken to the deep water yet as far as length. So when he comes back, I'd like to see that. I would have loved to have seen them continue when they had him debut a couple years ago and take out Bad News Barrett when he was still just Wade Barrett. Take him out of the Rumble. That was really cool. I would have liked to have seen that continue. That would have been neat. I don't know. So that's just what I think on that. Question number 3 from Dr. Bostonian. Could you ever see the dead man, Undertaker, hold another title belt again? For example, if Brock goes into Mania with the belt and faces Taker, do you see Taker winning and becoming champ? Here's the thing. I think if the Undertaker does face Brock again at WrestleMania, and I do feel that is the most likely scenario right now, because I think it's the only match that's really going to work for the Undertaker. I don't see it being for the title because WWE is all about, it's not about one match at WrestleMania. It's rarely, especially in recent times, been just about one match. There's always something else. And combining a match that could sell the pay-per-view on its own, Undertaker and Brock Lesnar too, because let's face it, everybody's going to want to see that match. Everybody's going to want to see it because of what happened last year. It would be a draw on its own. You don't need the WWE title to be in play there. Now, could I see it happening? Absolutely. I could see it happening, and the Undertaker putting his career on the line versus Lesnar's title. I could see it. I think it's pointless. It really would be taking the spot of at least 3, possibly as many 5 other guys, because then you have to ask yourself, Jesus, what are we doing with Reigns? What are we doing with Bryan? What are we doing with Ziggler? What are we doing with Rollins? What are we doing with all of these guys? What are we doing with Ambrose? Because it removes so many options, and it would just be nonsensical in so many ways. So I don't know. I could also see something happening where we have another type of Survivor Series team match at WrestleMania, but Team Sting versus Team Authority. I could see something like that happening, and that could solve that problem of what to do with so and so guys. Because I believe something else that's going to happen at the Rumble is we're going to see Dolph Ziggler, Eric Rowan, and Ryback all emerge in Sting garb, whether it be paint or wearing masks. I feel they're all going to be coming out in the black trench coats. That's what I see that happening, and that makes you wonder, well, how is that going to work going forward? So there's that. There's so many things that could happen between now and then, but if they wanted to have that match with Undertaker and Brock for the title, that's one thing they could do. I feel that weakens the entire card. I think it's a throwaway, and ultimately WrestleMania would suffer for it if they went that route. Could I see it happen? Yes. And if it does happen, I do see The Undertaker winning because I don't think Brock is sticking around. That could still change. But if The Undertaker does, he will drop the belt immediately. He will not have another run. He might hold the title for that night, but I see him retiring the next night on Raw if it were to happen. But I'm like, it's in my head as a possibility, but at like 10%. I just don't, maybe even 5%. I just don't see a big need for it. And I think if they talk it out, they'll come to the same conclusions that I am right now. Another one from Dr. Bostonian. This is kind of a plus add-on question to that. What are your top 5 favorite Undertaker wrestling moments? That's a really good question. This one actually made me think a little bit. No particular order at all. No particular order. The 1994 Royal Rumble casket match with Yokozuna. The whole at the end, I will not rest in peace. After basically the entire locker room came out to help Yokozuna win that match. I remember Bam Bam Bigelow laying on top of the casket, which was funny. That's one of those moments kind of legitimized the Undertaker for me. It was awesome, and his comeback after that was incredible. The Taker versus Taker stuff, so good. So I kind of mix all that together. His debut, 1990 Survivor Series, great debut. People forget that he was actually managed by Brother Love by way of Ted DiBiase, who's the man who actually brought him into the company. The Undertaker gimmick, it's very rare that a guy who had a background like the Undertaker had in WCW, because he was around for a long time as a bunch of other characters, Mean Mark and all this stuff. So it's quite interesting that he got one gimmick within the WWE and basically that's it. And it just worked immediately. When he came out at that Survivor Series, people didn't know what to do. And you know who doesn't get enough credit? Roddy Piper. He was on commentary for that match, and he sold the shit out of The Undertaker. I mean, he did. Look at the size of that ham hock. That was a good Piper. He did. He sold the shit out of him. So Piper doesn't get enough credit for that one. Of course, no list is complete without at least one Shawn Michaels reference. And I think it's a combination of a beginning and an end to their feuds. Their feud got really, really, really hot, of course, and even an ending to their feud for a small time when he faced The Undertaker at Bad Blood in the first ever Hell in a Cell match, which was great. But it's more about their matches at WrestleManias 25 and 26, which were epic. I mean, the first one is considered by many to be one of the top 3 or 4 matches in the history of wrestling. And I'm one of those people. I think it's an incredible match. When Undertaker caught a backflipping, a moonsaulting Shawn Michaels into a tombstone, that is, I mean, my God, it was great. I would have liked to have seen Shawn end the streak, but that's just me. Because I've never been a huge Undertaker guy, admittedly. But what great matches. And so that's in there. Strapping Stone Cold Steve Austin to the unholy symbol on Monday Night Raw, the kidnapping. Oh, what an awesome moment. It really was cool. Not really a wrestling moment, but one of those things that I constantly remember. It's ingrained into my memory. So that was a cool one. And finally, and this would be number 1 if I did have a top 5, the 1997-1998 feud with Kane. When Kane made his debut after the Dr. Isaac Yankem stuff, of course. When he made his debut with the company in that aforementioned Bad Blood Hell in the Cell match, when he rips the fucking door off the cage. The feud they had when The Undertaker would not fight him, and then I would walk through the fires of hell to fight you, Kane. And then their match at WrestleMania 14. It was just incredible. Up until that point, matches that Taker had at WrestleMania were not the greatest in the world. He was fighting guys like Elegante, Giant Gonzalez and stuff, which was one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history. People don't fucking remember that enough. That Undertaker's had a couple really big stinkos in his WrestleMania career, and the Superfly Jimmy Snuka match, which there were those type of matches, and then this match with Kane, which was so damn good, kind of really started to put a face onto who the Undertaker was. He'd been in the company for a long time at that point. It was a turning point for him. His WrestleMania streak got serious at that point, I felt. And the rest is kind of history. It kind of took on a life of its own. When he beat his brother at WrestleMania and people started to realize, oh, wow, he has not lost yet. it was quite friggin' entertaining to see what happened with his career after that point, the ministry and all of these other things that would happen with the Undertaker, and then the progression that he's had in his career, where he has reinvented himself, whether it be the mainly unpopular American Badass gimmick. I hated it, couldn't stand it, or any of the other things that he's done. Coming back with the shorter yet long hair against Kane once again at WrestleMania. All these things have just kind of culminated in a legendary career. So to kind of go back to the other question really quick, all of these reasons, and because he's so beloved within the company, and he really is, him going out and being put into the Hall of Fame, I could see him being put in the Hall of Fame this year, winning the title against Lesnar, and then retiring all on the same 2-day stretch. I could see that happening because of how much they love The Undertaker. And they so badly want to put Undertaker's face next to the greatest of all time. That's what the WWE truly wants, until Cena retires at least. The Undertaker is so desperately, they want him to be the face of the greatest WWE superstar of all time. Maybe not greatest wrestler of all time, but the greatest WWE superstar. The Undertaker is in that conversation for Vince and other guys. He's been called the conscience of the WWE. He's the man. He's the guy in the back. And when he does finally hang it up, I think we'll start seeing him in one-off appearances coming like The Rock and Stone Cold does. And he'll get those same type of pops that they do, because he's of that legendary status. I don't think there's any question about that. Whether or not I have the same admiration for him as others do, that's irrelevant. All right, Dr. Bostonian, you got one more question here, and it is, and this is just more of an opinion thing. By the way, what did you think of Sin Cara defeating Bad News Barrett on SmackDown? This was before he had his title match the next week. When he beat Barrett, I was like, okay, what the hell are they doing? Because I didn't really care for the match. It was okay. But then the title match they had on SmackDown opened my friggin' eyes to Sin Cara for the first time since he has made his appearance. I really enjoyed that match. I wouldn't mind seeing more out of Barrett and Sin Cara. I know it was just a quick filler feud to get back to Ziggler eventually. Maybe as early as Monday, who knows. So I could see... It's just nice that we're seeing a little bit more out of Sin Cara at this point, because there's been so little of him outside of being on NXT and being the tag team champions with the Lucha Dragon type stuff. But the fact that at a taping he has lost those tag team titles, spoiler, sorry, that kind of shows me that he has a future in singles competition back on the main roster. So I think it's a really good thing. I don't think it hurts Barrett at all to lose that match, and then, beating him in the title match was important. I don't think it hurts him. I think it only helps Sin Cara. And they need a good feud. They need good matches for Barrett right now. I think that's the most important thing. Great questions, Dr. Bostonian. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great ones, great ones. My good friend, Logan Barrett. I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Another great question from you this week. I always like reading your questions because you have these really interesting off-the-wall stuff that I love to read, and it always gets me thinking. And this one is probably the hardest question I've been asked yet, because I simply could not get, it was hard. It was a hard one. What is your favorite mismatch feud? For example, mine would have to be the Hurricane versus The Rock. Backstage segments were hilarious, and the ending with the Hurricane beating The Rock with the distraction from Stone Cold was absolutely gold to me. That was really good. I have 3 that I kind of put in the same realm, and one is arguably maybe not even a mismatch, and that's the first one, Mick Foley versus The Rock. I feel it was a mismatch just based off of who they were. In hindsight, it really wasn't, because Mick Foley is one of the greatest stars in WWE history. I think that's fair to say. But the way they looked, the way that they wrestled, the way that they presented themselves, it couldn't be any more of a mismatch. And it was so entertaining to see these guys go. Mick Foley arguably is what made The Rock into a fucking badass. When Mick Foley drug his ass into high water, into real deep water, and took him to places The Rock has never been before as far as hardcore type matches. Just not even hardcore setting shit on fire or whatever. Just having these gimmick matches that were so brutal, and The Rock showing sides of himself that we never saw before. Some of the funniest shit that he ever did was in matches with Foley. When they were fighting inside of an office building, I believe it was the empty arena match, the halftime heat. Inside the office building, and he's answering the phone while fighting Foley. It's gold, absolute gold. So that one's there. Shane McMahon, both of his feuds with Kurt Angle and Kane, 2 separate feuds, both completely mismatches. Shane, while he is a great athlete, can never be considered a wrestler, ever. I don't think anyone that would ever make that distinction. Is he a fighter? Yes. Is he a gifted athlete? Abso-friggin-lutely. There's no question about either of those things. When Angle threw his ass through that glass after failing 3 or 4 times and dropping Shane on his head, I remember just having so much respect for Shane McMahon after that, because that is one tough bastard. There might not be a tougher wrestler, a tougher performer, a tougher athlete in the history of the WWE. Pound for pound, Shane McMahon might have been the toughest son of a bitch we've ever seen compete. I mean, the things he did, and that whole feud with Kane. Jesus Christ. When Kane's career is over, we're really going to appreciate what we saw out of him. Kane is probably one of the least appreciated wrestlers in history. You just don't have this appreciation. But when you go back and you talk about all these great moments in so many different categories, Kane shows up a lot, man, because he's always there and he's always putting on great performances. Maybe not the greatest ring work in the world, but his performances are always solid, and this is another example of that. But my favorite feud of mismatches, and this truly is a mismatch, involves The Undertaker, which I've already said I'm not a huge fan of. But The Undertaker, the American Badass Undertaker, when he had his feud with Jeff Hardy, they had a ladder match on Monday Night Raw for the WWE Championship. You go back and you watch that match. Yes, Hardy did not win, but he won something, maybe even more prize than title. He won The Undertaker's respect. At the end of that match, the look on The Undertaker's face, it looked 100% legit. He was like, that was awesome to me. Very, very cool feud. Jeff Hardy, he was on the verge to superstardom, and that feud really helped propel him to that next level, I feel. So that was a great one, too. Oh, God, I am going to completely butcher this name. By the way, really good question, once again. Mr. Barrett, I've got some bad news. Oh, God, here we go. I am so sorry for what I'm about to do to your names. Your names. I'm so sorry for what I'm about to do to your name. I'm about to Dave this name in the face. Oh, my God. Mihailo Stojanovic. Holy crap. Mihailo Stojanovic. How can you have like a almost like Hispanic sounding first name and then like a Slavic last name? That's fucking crazy. Awesome name. Mahagio. Maybe it's Mahagio? Mahagio Stojanovic. Yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm not saying it again, though. Fuck that. He's got 2 questions. I believe it's a he. 2 questions. Rollins, Ambrose, Reigns. Who do you like best? That's the first question. Ambrose. No, I'm sorry. No, that's not true anymore. It was Ambrose. It's Rollins. I like Rollins the best right now. What Rollins has done recently has completely turned the tables. Ambrose, they're in a holding pattern with Ambrose. They're trying not to hurt his value too much, but they don't really have a vision for him as of yet. Rollins, right now, he's my favorite of the three. He's the best worker in the ring. He may have caught up to Ambrose on the mic, and he's fucking nuts. He's a dick. He's a legitimate dick. And the funny thing is, when Rollins was brought up, he was the one of the three that everybody figured was going to be the major face. And it's funny because the other two are faces, and he's the ultra heel who has done so much with the opportunities given to him. My God. Let's give some credit to Seth Rollins, shall we? Right now, I like Seth Rollins the most. I see all three of them having great careers. The second question, who do you think will be the biggest star in years to come of those three? You know how I answer questions. I got to break it up. Who the WWE wants to be the biggest star is obviously Roman Reigns. They are grooming Roman Reigns to be the next John Cena. They are trying to push Roman Reigns to be the next PG-era star that does the Make-A-Wish, that's on the Fruity Pebbles boxes. You know, that's who they want to be. Who the fans right now want to be the biggest star is Dean Ambrose, and he has the potential to easily surpass everybody else of the three if it was in his hands. I think when they see Ambrose, they see another Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's what they're hoping he becomes. The reality is the biggest star in the next 5 years, unless all of the booking the way they've done with Rollins is just kind of a way to filler almost, it's probably going to be Rollins because his performance has been so good and what he has done during this entire authority angle has been so amazing. I mean, I almost get a chill every time I hear him say John Cena or John Cena's name when he's like, listen, John, I'm going to kill him anyway, John. I love it. I love the way he talks because he has this realism about him and he connects. He connects. You know, Vince talks about not connecting, especially in regards to a guy like Cesaro. Rollins connects. Whether you like it or not, he connects. And it's awesome. So I think my answer is probably going to be the same for both questions. It's going to be Seth Rollins. Ambrose, I think, has the potential to really be the man. I think Ambrose could be one of the best of all time. I think he has that type of it factor and star potential that maybe the other two don't have. Ambrose has that in spades. He has that just naturally. The other two have to kind of work a little more at it. Ambrose has it naturally. It's funny. He has all the skills that you want naturally. He's a decent worker. He's a great talker. And he just has that look of just, wow. He sells merchandise to guys like Tommy C and me that wouldn't necessarily buy merch anymore. Like, I know Tommy C has said it, and I've said it too. We'd both buy those friggin' hoodies that he has. Those are fucking badass. He has that ability. Reigns solely has gotten by on his look up until now. He's got that amazing look. And Rollins, he relies on the fact that he's the best worker of the three. It's so funny how these three are a contrast and of each other, and they're just it's incredible. And that's probably why they worked so well when they were the Shield, because it was just like three parts. But when it comes to overall natural it factor, it's Ambrose. He has the ability to really become something big. But as everything stands right now, with all things being equal in what they are in the WWE, the answer is Rollins. My good friend and my guest last night in a taped interview for Creators Corner, which will air in 2 weeks, not this Thursday, but the coming Thursday after that, Devious Dave Rose has a couple of questions. He writes, my favorite wrestler is Macho Man Randy Savage, so this is a two-part question. First, what are your thoughts on Savage himself, his wrestling career, and his contribution to the industry? That's a really good question. I'd expect nothing less out of Dave Rose. Randy Poffo, as a man, of just Randy Savage as who he was in himself, I thought was an incredible human being. The stories that you hear, and you don't know too much of him because you only know what you saw in the public eye when he got really jacked, and you could tell he was roiding and he was kind of crazy, challenging Hogan to fights and stuff like that. That's the Macho Man that gets remembered. But unfortunately, what you don't realize is that was performance part. A lot of him, he was embracing the Macho Man character at that point. And a lot of people will point to the fact that what you saw on camera 9 times out of 10 was how he was in the locker room, especially in the early days. I mean, the voice, it's how he talked, he'd always gesture. Hogan always talks about that, when he came out of the ring, it's exactly how he talked. It's just who he was. His wrestling career, I think the overall career, when you look at the entire thing from beginning to end, you could make an argument it's one of the greatest top 2 or 3 careers in wrestling history. It is so impressive. The titles that he's won, the storylines he was involved with, and the fact that he was a top flight worker. And regardless of how long he was away, how the injury angles they would do, he was always seemed to be beat up. The matches he would put on, and every time that he came back, the reactions he got from crowds were amazing. I remember it was a Monday Nitro. It had to be 99-ish, maybe 98, late 98. I can't remember exactly when. I hadn't seen Macho Man in a long time. He came out, and he was so fucking jacked. I mean, it was ridiculous. He was so muscular. He had muscles in places where most people don't have places. It was insane. And Heenan sold that moment. He was like, "Look how big he is! Whoa!" He was so big. And yet, the first thing he does, top rope, boom, double axe handle. It was Macho Man. He was consummate Macho Man. And it was awesome. He really was the Macho Man. And his contribution to the industry, his legacy, the things, he opened the doors to a style of wrestling that we hadn't seen before. He bridged the gap between the guys like Superstar Billy Graham, who was a yeller, and he would scream and yell and get mad at things and make fun of people, but he would make fun of folks and stuff. But Macho Man was able to bridge that gap, and kind of him, and along with another guy who's one of his greatest rivals of all time, Jake the Snake Roberts. They, don't get me wrong, Macho Man could scream and yell with the best of them, but he also had a way of talking, straight talking to the camera and connecting on a psychological level and making you think with his words. It was the same thing that Jake Roberts was able to do. Jake Roberts rarely had to raise his voice because he would just stare into the camera and talk about how you shouldn't trust me, but trust me on how you can't trust me. His cold eyes. Macho Man had that same kind of thing going for him, but that wildness that was behind it. Like, you would see this darkness in his eyes, and then just behind it, you would see the fire burning. I mean, that's just how he was. He was a gap bridger. He made wrestling possible for a generation of people that may not have been able to get into the business previous. I mean, so his contribution can never be understated. I think it is one of the most important and most defining contributions to wrestling of anybody. I love the Macho Man. He's fantastic. And I forget to mention him more often when I talk about my greatest whatever lists. It's just because you kind of took him for granted because he was so good, or he was so crazy that maybe some people didn't take him serious enough. He was great, plain and simple. What do you think Savage's best rivalry was? It's easy to go with Jake Roberts. It would be so easy to go with that because it was a great feud. I could also say Ric Flair. that was a great rivalry. Really, really, really great rivalry because it was so personal with Liz. But I have to go with a feud that lasted well over a year, had some fantastic matches, created a star, reinvigorated Macho Man's career in a lot of ways, and changed things. It was all going around in the background when WCW was seizing power in the Monday Night Wars, and it never gets talked about nearly as much as it should. It is the feud with Diamond Dallas Page. I mean, that feud was so good. You ever just want to be fully fucking entertained, go watch that feud from beginning to end. Just catch every Monday night Nitro, catch all their pay-per-view matches. I mean, incredible. So much fun, physical, and it created DDP. DDP was on the rise, but when he got the best of the Macho Man, it turned him into something else. And Macho Man was kind of aimless going into that feud. He didn't really have a place in the main title picture or the main scene. So what they do, they created a new main event. He created his own main event status with DDP. It was the most important thing every Monday night, it seemed like. It was just so important to watch, and I never missed it. It was great. So my favorite rivalry, and I think was his best, was DDP because of how important it was. All right, I'm going to apologize once again for butchering another name. Really good question, by the way, Dave. Okay. Hanina Carly Alexander. She writes, do you think wrestling is headed for a new era? Like, do you think we're heading into a boom era of wrestling? First, I believe this is the lovely lady who commented on the Will and Danny video about how I look so sexy when I ripped off my shirt. Well, thank you. If it is you, thank you very much, kind woman. That got me very excited to hear how it excited you. So I'm glad that I was able to provide a spark of fat intensity. I'm kidding. It was very nice. I appreciate it. Probably just goofing on me completely. I wouldn't blame you if you did. Look at me. Jiggly. Anyways, to answer your question, really good question. I talked about it recently, actually. I do feel that wrestling is headed to a new era. I do feel that wrestling is headed to a new boom. If you look at all of the things that are happening, and not only in WWE, outside of WWE, you have almost a independent circuit that is feeling more and more like the old territory days. You have wrestlers becoming champions in multiple organizations again. Del Rio, he won a title in an organization. He's probably going to end up being a champion down in Lucha Underground before long because he just joined Lucha. I can also see him heading over to New Japan and working there. New Japan, Global Force Wrestling, Ring of Honor, probably AAA and Lucha will be in there as well, have all kind of banded together. And there's a possibility that they become one entity at some point. And it would not surprise me if it fell under the Global Force Wrestling brand. I'm telling you, people might think this is a crazy thing, but if Global Force Wrestling is able to continue to promote events, even though they really didn't do much, and let's say they are able to get a roster, it's not beyond complete thought that Jeff Jarrett, who still owns stock in TNA Wrestling, by the way, he still owns a little portion of that company, why not go back and buy it out completely and absorb it into the Global Force Wrestling brand? There's your roster right there. And you position that with all of the other organizations. You partner with Lucha. You partner with Ring of Honor. You partner with New Japan and all AAA, all these other organizations. It doesn't have to be a massive super show, but you let talents freely go within them, and you have almost a union of wrestling industry now, wrestling companies. You want to take on WWE, that's the way to do it. And here's the thing. WWE would respond just like they did when they were pushed before. They will push the envelope in ways that everybody's been clamoring for. But here's the reality. They've already positioned themselves to do that anyway. The way they're going subtly, they have gone to more edgy storylines. They are positioning younger talent in a way they haven't done in years. They're relying on younger guys to push the older guys in ways they have not done in many, many years. We are on the cusp of a big boom. And this WrestleMania, I've called it the most important WrestleMania in recent history, maybe of all time, because it is going to end an era in a lot of sense of certain wrestlers, certain ways of thinking, and maybe even kick off a new way of doing business as far as how other companies, especially if WWE continues to try to get all other organizations out of the area for the WrestleMania week. That's going to piss some people off enough to where something where everybody else coming together to kind of take down WWE, that would make it possible. So it's a very important time in wrestling history. I think in 10 years we'll look back at this year as a pivotal moment when the new boom era started. Really, really good question. Really good question. That's all the questions. That was great. A lot of good questions, and you guys were awesome today, man. Great questions. Hope I wasn't too long-winded. Hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast. Make sure that you're checking out everybody in the family. Checking out, if you're a hockey person, make sure you check out Shot from the Point tonight. Shot from Point live, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The great Joe Cronin over on Joe Cronin Show. And, Spectrum Gaming 617. I make burpee. Dave Rose, Devious Dave Rose. The Dark Show every Friday night. Grand Slam 87, Jeff Huffman's channel. If you want your video game fix, make sure you're checking all that out. It's really awesome stuff. If you want to get some Dead on Dave merchandise, you want to drink out of my face, you want to wear my face on your chest, go to deadondave.spreadshirt.com and check that stuff out. Anything that I make goes right back into making this channel better. So any support is very, very much well appreciated. And I'd like, for anyone who's stuck with the video this long, I'd like you to do me a favor. That Will and Danny video, it's maybe my favorite thing that I've done yet. I absolutely enjoyed it. Will really enjoyed it. It was great. We had a blast with it. Here's what I want. I would like everybody who's watching right now, take a second, send that video, tweet it to John Cena. Tweet it to John Cena. That is my goal right now. I want to get a reaction from John Cena. Also, it would help me out a lot if you guys put it on Reddit or Tumblr or whatever other shit is out there. Throw it on there. Let's try to get it trending. I would like to see this video go viral. If not the long version that's on Joe's channel, then the shorter version that's on mine, because I think it's absolutely hysterical. And a lot of people are like, you guys know that it's scripted, right? Come on, man. So really, just support that. Send it to John Cena. Please tweet this to John Cena. It's too funny. Let's see if we can get a reaction from Superman himself, shall we? Other than that, thanks for joining me once again here on Sunday. Hope you guys had a good time with viewer questions. Make sure you ask more questions. Next week, I want even more questions. I love answering them because I entertain myself, even if I don't entertain anyone else. So thank you guys for joining me. I will see you next week. I'll see you tomorrow. Right here on Dead on Dave Productions with your Daily Focus. I'm out. Peace.